In the summer of 1944, something changed in France. For years, people had lived in silence, in fear, watching their country controlled by an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. But when that control finally began to break, everything that had been buried, anger, betrayal, pain, came rushing to the surface all at once. And what followed wasn't just liberation. It was revenge. To understand why, we have to go back a few years earlier. It all started in May 1940, when Nazi Germany launched its invasion of France. The attack was fast, calculated, and shocking. German forces pushed through Belgium and into the Ardennes, a dense forest the French believed was impossible for tanks to cross. They were wrong. Within days, the German army broke through French defenses, surrounded entire divisions, and advanced deep into the country. By June 14, Paris had already fallen. Just over a week later, on June 22, France officially surrendered. 6 weeks. That's all it took to bring down one of Europe's strongest nations. After the defeat, France was divided. The North and West, including Paris, were placed under direct German occupation. The South was controlled by a new French government based in the town of Vichy. On paper, it was still French. In reality, it answered to Germany. This government was led by Philippe Pétain, a World War I hero. At first, many people trusted him. He was old, experienced, and promised stability during a time of chaos. After the shock of defeat, people were desperate for order, and Pétain offered exactly that. But behind those promises, something darker was already taking shape. The Vichy regime didn't just cooperate with Nazi Germany, it often went further than it was asked to. In 1940, it introduced its own anti-Jewish laws, removing Jews from jobs, public life, and society. Soon after, arrests began. One of the most horrifying moments came in July 1942, during the Vel d'Hiv roundup in Paris. Over 13,000 Jews, including thousands of children, were arrested by French police and later sent to concentration camps like Auschwitz. This wasn't just occupation. This was collaboration. At the same time, political opponents were targeted. Resistance suspects, communists, and anyone seen as a threat were arrested. Surveillance increased. Newspapers were censored. Radios were controlled. Fear became part of everyday life. But under the surface, something else was growing. By 1943, the war was starting to turn against Germany. News of defeats, especially at Stalingrad, spread quietly through France. People began to sense that the Nazis were no longer invincible. And with that shift, resistance began to grow. Across the country, underground networks started forming. These weren't just soldiers, they were ordinary people. Teachers, workers, students. Some were loyal to Charles de Gaulle. Others were communists. Many had no political identity at all. They just wanted their country back. They sabotaged railways, cut communication lines, and passed intelligence to the Allies. They helped downed pilots escape. They risked everything. But every act of resistance had consequences. Because the German forces couldn't control France alone, they needed help from within. And that's where things took a darker turn. In January 1943, a new force was created, the Milice Française. It was led by Joseph Darnan, a man who believed completely in Nazi ideology. He wasn't just cooperating, he was committed. He even swore personal loyalty to Hitler. The Milice wasn't just a police force. It was a weapon. Its main goal was simple: destroy the resistance, no matter the cost. People joined for different reasons. Some believed in fascism. Others wanted power. Some were afraid of what would happen if they refused. And some just wanted a uniform and authority. As the Milice spread across France, something began to break. Trust disappeared. Neighbors became suspicious of each other. A simple comment could lead to an accusation. And an accusation could lead to a knock on your door, in the middle of the night. When the Milice arrested someone, there was no real process. No fair trial. People were taken, interrogated, and often tortured. Names were forced out. And one name led to another. Entire resistance networks could collapse in days. By 1944, in many areas, people feared the Milice more than the German soldiers. because the Germans were outsiders. But the milice were French. They lived in the same neighborhoods, walked the same streets, knew who you were. Executions became common. Some were quiet. Others were public, designed to send a message. Obey, or suffer the consequences. But instead of breaking the resistance, it often had the opposite effect. It made people angrier, more determined. And by mid-1944, everything was reaching a breaking point. Then came June 6, 1944. D-Day. In one of the largest military operations in history, around 156,000 Allied soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy. Thousands of ships filled the sea. Paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines during the night. It was massive. And it changed everything. News spread quickly across France. Even with German censorship, people heard. Through whispers. Through radio. Through rumors. For the first time in years, hope felt real. As Allied forces pushed inland, the resistance became more active. They no longer stayed hidden. In some areas, they even took control before the Allies arrived. By August, Paris was ready. On August 19, 1944, an uprising began. Resistance fighters took to the streets. Barricades were built. Police went on strike. Fighting broke out across the city. Days later, Allied forces entered Paris. And on August 25, the city was free. Crowds filled the streets. People celebrated. Flags waved. Soldiers were welcomed as heroes. But almost immediately, the mood shifted. Because now, people started asking a different question: who betrayed us? Across France, suspected collaborators were identified, dragged into public, and punished. Some punishments were symbolic. Women accused of relationships with German soldiers had their heads shaved in public, humiliated in front of crowds. Around 20,000 women went through this. But other punishments were far more brutal. Executions. Between 1944 and 1945, an estimated 9,000 to 10,000 people were killed without formal trials. This was known as the unofficial purge. Some victims were clearly guilty, members of the milice, informants, collaborators. But not all. In the chaos, accusations spread quickly. Personal grudges, jealousy, misunderstandings, all became part of the violence. Once someone was labeled a traitor, there was often no way back. Justice became revenge. Members of the milice were primary targets. Many tried to escape as the Allies advanced. Some fled to Germany. Others went into hiding. But many were caught. And when they were, the consequences were severe. Public executions became a way for communities to reclaim control. After years of fear, people wanted closure. They wanted to see the people who had terrorized them face consequences. But there was a problem. This kind of justice had no limits. And once violence starts, it's hard to control where it ends. That's when the French government stepped in. Under Charles de Gaulle, a more organized system of justice was introduced. It was about what happens when years of fear, silence, and betrayal finally explode all at once. It's easy to look back and judge. But the truth is, in those moments, nothing is simple. And maybe the most uncomfortable question is this: if we were there, what would we have done?